Israel Keyes was born in 1978 in Utah. Israel Keyes grew up in an extremist family living in isolation deep in the woods of Washington. He was homeschooled, lived without electricity or running water, and had almost no contact with. At 14, he bombs. At 18, he admitted torturing animals, and then told his family he no longer believed in God. He believed in chaos. In 1998, he joined the L. At the time, Israel Keyes appeared neat, polite, and quiet as fellow soldiers. Said he drank straight Jack Daniels. He never spoke about his past and never lost his when he was like a ghost, the perfect cover. Then, he suddenly disappeared for over a decade. He wandered across the us. He left behind kill kits, cash, duct tape, guns, zip ties, buried across the country from Alaska to Vermont. He didn't know his victims. He didn't stalk them beforehand. He chose them at random. No pattern, no profile. All he needed was an opportunity. His rule: never kill. Where you live, no internet, no security cameras. No digital trail. And for years, it working. Until 2012, when he kidnapped Samantha Koenig, an 18-year-old from a coffee stand in Anchorage. She was working the night shift. He used a gun to threaten her and take her away. A few days later, the family received a ransom note, but by then, Samantha was already dead. He staged a photo sewing her eyes open with fishing line. It was his way of controlling everything. When the FBI caught him, he confessed to at least 11 murders, but investigators believe the real number could be 3 times higher or even more. He slit his own throat in his jail cell before he left behind a suicide note filled with drawings and cryptic words about demons and an agent of evil. The FBI once said he was a killer who didn't want fame, a predator so patient, it was terrifying. He moved through the shadows like a ghost. And the most chilling part, the FBI is still tracking down the kill kits he buried. Even to this day, by 2012, the FBI knew something was terrible wrong, but they didn't know just how bad it really was. A girl named Samantha Koenig disappeared from a coffee stand in Anchorage, Alaska. The crime scene was too clean as if she had vanished into thin air, but behind that disappearance was a man. But behind that disappearance was a man who had spent years hogging what he called his hobby. His name was real. He wasn't your type serial killer. He didn't hunt in just one area. There was no specific type of victim. In fact, he took pride in being the anti-Ted Bundy. He left no trace. There is only one thing he cared to control. He flew across the country, rented cars, buried kill kits, duct tape, guns, bleach, shovels in different states. Years later, when the urge to kill returned, he went back, dug them up, and acted. He called it art. The FBI called it evil in Vermont. He murdered a married couple. There was no reason. He chose them, just Bakari. He wanted to. He tied Moan in his own home and vanished without a trace. Their friend saying that he is a type of friend who will believe in renting to fix the roof, and then he will go back and kill people. Back to Enrique after a few weeks of silence. A picture of Samantha's ransom sent to her family that looks still alive. The fact that she died many days before her, braided hair with her eyes with a fishing line, and built her to sit up like his doll using her ATM card in Arizona that made the FBI catch him for many months to release a small part of his crimes. Sometimes he told the agent that no one knew what I knew about me. When they asked him how many people laughed, less than a dozen people who laughed more than a dozen people who wanted to laugh more than him. He wanted him to laugh more and more. He wanted him to lie more than him. He wanted him to laugh more than him. He wanted him to laugh more than he wanted him to lie more than him. He wanted him to laugh more faster than. Always took a step ahead. And then he committed suicide in the cell 2012 using a blade hidden in the pencil's intestine. He left the paintings with his blood. 11 skulls. 11 victims, may be more. Then there are still missing cases coinciding with his schedule. The kits of murder has not been found. Families are still waiting for the truth that we may never know how many people have killed, and that is what he has said he wants to be forgotten is the last way he tells the FBI, don't tell my story, but then you see that we are still telling because those like Israel Key does not disappear, leaving the echoing of him. Looks like a neighbor, but the most frighteningly smiling in the crowd is the most frighteningly smiling in the crowd. Modern America from 1982 to 1987. Colors of young girls are constantly discovered in 5 different states. All of them are strangled to be thrown near the road near the police. Resistance in each state handled like separate cases, but if you look closely at a clear model that appears, someone is hunting the turning point. In November 1986, a young police officer in Indiana discovered a strange parking car in the morning. Inside is a man with blood stains on shoes and a sophisticated story. That person named Daniel Zylito. The name sounds quite normal. At that time, no one knew who he was, but when the police checked the license plate and fingerprint, everything begins to reveal. He has a sealed minor crime record, use many fake names, and bring a series of identification papers. Not mine. One of them belongs to a girl who has just been murdered 2 weeks away. Jump in. Description: psychologists. He is a disguise. Power seekers. Like to control the victim. Love to watch fear slowly bloom on a victim's face. And then he'd smile. Zylito confessed to 5 murders, but prosecutors believe the real number could be as high as 20. Maybe even more. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1989. No parole, no reduction. He died in prison in 2015. He never showed any remorse. Later FBI files revealed a chilling detail. During interrogations, Vito once said, "They always believed me. It was what their mistake called him was also the monster of the devils, predators." But Daniel J. Leto has proven something that the FBI has warned: the most dangerous murderers who are not unusual, but those who blend into the crowd that no one notice. An agent who said he did not have the horn. He had the charm of Vio Genos, that never liked to be in the world. He did not ask for his own money, and he did. And the tradition is the law that makes him dangerous. In the years after the Mafia war is a machine that can be predicted, to be controlled, divided into every framework that everyone has a path and everyone knows not to overcome it. Licky Luciano has designed it so the Mafia Council, the commission, was established to keep everything clean, without the free assassination, without attracting attention, and most importantly, no drugs. But Zenovis, he did not care about him, thinking that the Mafia had become weak people, like Frank Costello, prime minister of the underworld too. Carefully, Costello, wearing more valuable suits of a person in the month of the judge. Genovese is a sign of weakness, so he acted in 1957. Genovese ordered Costello to shot the shot without hit, but the message was clear that Costello had to withdraw, like that Jenny's, who made himself as a tycoon, must be his coronation. But it marked the beginning of the collapse, because what Genovese did not understand was not to understand that the ambition that lacks discipline can only lead to suicide. And in the Mafia world, you cannot change the rules. You have to survive by owning them. He begins through the drug trafficking that violates one of La Cosa Nostra's largest unwritten laws, that makes the enemy his enemies show off his powerful power. And Luciano, even Luciano, who is exiled in Italy, he is a drug dealer, but his foolish man is invincible. To think that he is an abnormal man who has been trafficking. But Genovese believed he was untouchable. He organized a meeting, his grand move. He wanted to gather all the top Mafia bosses under one roof. He chose a remote town, Appalachian, New York, as the location. It was a critical mistake. Invincible for him to be. Invincible for him to be. Invincible for him. As a meeting was his big game, he wanted to gather all the top Mafia tycoons under a roof. He chose a remote town of Appalachian, New York, as a serious mistake. On November 14, 1957, more than 60 most dangerous Mafia names in the United States who flocked to a remote farm owned by the Mafia boss Joe. Barbara Black Cadillacs from other states of expensive suits and expensive cigars, and an extremely pure state. Police officer Edgar Crosswell followed Barbara's house for months on that day. Something was not too many expensive cars, that were too many of the secret conversations he called the raid support. The mafia runs through the forest in thousands of dollars worth, a name jumping into a groove of another name trying to hide in the chicken coop. Like comedy, but it is goofulas in real life, and it has appeared on major newspapers across the United States. The title, written easily throughout the 10th century, J. Edgar Hoover has denied the mafia. Now he could not pretend that La Cosa Nostra became a national threat and Zenovis. He became the face of the FBI that had previously ignored the organized criminal, now that he could not ignore his eyes. And this is a surprise that other tycoons blame Zenovis because all this because of attention, because of the disorder that has been destroying the system, so that they have done it so that it has been so big, that it has been so big, that too noisy, too dangerous. They turned away from him in 1959. Zenovis was arrested for drug trafficking, a case of many people who spoke because he himself tried to dominate him in prison for 10 centuries later, forgotten while Costello's confrontation lived in the last days of a luxury apartment in Manhattan, sipping Scott wine and receiving a phone from the senators. The meaning of my Mizanobi wants power, but he dies in the hands of Costello, surviving with dignity and freedom to have a lesson here, hidden deep in the blood and betrayal of the real power, without screaming it, waiting for it to survive, and in the world of organized criminals that are not always the most cruel winner.